Hello and welcome back. Now we'll talk about Chapter 5 of the DPDP Act and how we can map it to any organizational needs. In our previous discussion, we explored the provisions of Chapter 3 and 4 of the DPDP Act 2023 and how organizations can map their specific needs to ensure compliance and secure data processing environment. This chapter will outline the establishment, composition, and functioning of the Data Protection Board of India. Now let's talk about sections 18, 19 and 20 of the DPDP Act. Section 18 is about establishing the Data Protection Board of India. This section sets up the Data Protection Board of India as a legal entity with the authority to operate independently. It can enter into contracts, sue or be sued, and perform other functions that are typical to a corporate body. For example, think of Data Protection Board like the Securities and Exchange Board of India, that is the SEBI. Now, SEBI was established to regulate the securities market with the power to enforce rules and take legal action. Similarly, the Data Protection Board will have the authority to enforce data protection laws, ensuring organizations comply with the DPDP Act. Section 19, that is the composition of the board. This section outlines the structure of the board, including the appointment of a chairperson and members with specific qualification, data governance, law, technology, and related fields. For example, now imagine the board like the Reserve Bank of India, that is the RBI, where key figures like the governor and the deputy governor are selected based on their expertise in economics, banking, and financial regulation. The Data Protection Board will be similarly composed of experts in data protection to guide its operations effectively. Section 20. Terms of Service. This section details the service conditions for a chairperson and members, including their salary, allowances, and tenure. For example, now consider the tenure and compensation of judges in the Indian judiciary system. They receive specific salaries and benefits, and their terms of service are clearly defined. The Data Protection Board will operate in a similar manner, ensuring that its members are compensated fairly and serve for a fixed terms to maintain consistency and stability. Okay, so let's go for the action steps. First one would be to familiarize with the board. Understand the composition and function of the Data Protection Board, which is very essential for aligning to your organizational compliance efforts with its governance structure. For example, just like a financial institute aligns its policies with the guidelines issued by the RBI, your organization should also align its data protection laws and policies with the structure and expectations of the Data Protection Board. Second, identify key personnel. Ensure that your organization includes individuals with expertise in data governance, law, and technology who can effectively interact with the board. For example, a multinational company, that is TCS. So they might appoint a DPO, that is a data protection officer, who is well versed in data governance to liaise with the Data Protection Board, ensuring compliance with data protection standards. Third, align with regulatory expectations. Prepare your organization for potential interactions with the board by ensuring all processing activities are in compliance with the DPDP Act. For example, similar to how companies in pharmaceutical industry comply with the standards set by the Central Drugs Standard Control Organization, that is the CDSCO, to avoid penalties, your organization should also adhere to DPDP Act to avoid any legal issues and fines. Now let's talk about Section 21 and 22. Section 21 is about disqualifications of board members. This section lists the conditions under which a person is disqualified from being a member of the board, such as any insolvency, criminal convictions, conflict of interest, or abuse of position. So similar disqualification criteria are seen in other regulatory bodies, such as the SEBI, that is the Securities and Exchange Board of India, where members must maintain integrity and avoid conflict of interest. For example, a SEBI member found engaging in insider trading would be disqualified. The same principle applies to the Data Protection Board to ensure ethical governance. Section 22. Procedures for resignation. This section outlines the procedures for resignation, including how vacancies should be filled and any post-resignation employment restrictions. For example, in many corporate boards, members who resign may be subject to cooling off periods before joining a competitor. Similarly, the Data Protection Board's members may face restrictions to prevent conflicts of interest post-resignation, ensuring the integrity of the board's work. Action steps would be first, to monitor compliance. We have to regularly ensure that the board members meet the eligibility criteria, which is very essential for maintaining the integrity of the board. Financial institutions like HDFC ICICI Bank conduct often background checks on their board members to ensure compliance with regulatory standards. Similarly, your organization must have mechanisms in place to verify that its members remain qualified throughout the tenure. Second, establish clear procedures. We have to develop internal policies for handling resignation and filling vacancies. For example, large corporations like Google, Facebook, Microsoft, etc. have succession plans and clear resignation processes for their executives. Organizations also must have similar processes to maintain stability and continuity. Third, plan for continuity. Prepare succession plans to ensure that the board can continue to function even if there is any disqualification or resignation. For example, large companies like Google, Microsoft, etc. have great contingency plans for key positions to ensure that there is no disruption in the leadership. Your organization should have similar plans to quickly fill vacancies. Coming to section 23 and 24. Section 23 is about the procedural rules of the board. This section details the rules governing the board's meetings, decision-making process, and handling any irregularities to ensure transparency and efficiency. For example, the procedural rules that are similar to Central Board of Direct Taxes, that is the CBDT, where regular meetings and clearly defined processes help in effective decision making. Same way, the Data Protection Board, having these rules in place, can ensure smooth functioning and can address issues effectively. Section 24. Appointment of officers and employees. The board has the authority to appoint officers and employees for its necessary functions with the approval of the central government, ensuring that it has the required manpower to operate efficiently. For example, the Election Commission of India appoints officers to manage electoral processes. The Data Protection Board will also appoint staff to carry out functions. This ensures that the board is well equipped to carry out its own responsibilities. Okay, the action steps to map it to any organizational needs would be first, to engage with board's procedures. We have to stay informed about the board's procedural rules that is essential for organizations to effectively respond to their directives. For example, just as any legal team, always stay updated on court's procedures to represent their clients effectively. Now, data protection teams in an organization must be familiar with the board's procedures to engage appropriately. Second, appoint qualified staff. We need to hire or designate personnel with expertise to interact with the board. That is very crucial for the compliance. For example, companies like Google, Microsoft, etc. hire legal expertise to liaise with the regulatory bodies like the SEBI and the RBI. Now, organizations should have data protection officers who can effectively interact with the Data Protection Board. Third, ensure compliance. We have to develop processes to comply with the board's administrative and procedural requirements. That is a key to avoid penalties. Example, just like companies adhere to tax regulation to avoid any scrutiny by the income tax department, organizations must align their data protection practices with the requirements set by the Data Protection Board. Coming to section 25 and 26, that is the powers and responsibilities of the chairperson. Section 25 is the function of the board. The board is responsible for adjudicating complaints, ensuring compliance with the data protection laws, and issuing directives to the organization. For example, the role of the Data Protection Board is similar to the NCDRC, that is the National Consumer Disputes Redressal Commission, which adjudicates consumer complaints and ensures compliance with the consumer protection laws. The Data Protection Board will similarly resolve data protection complaints and enforce compliance. Section 26. Empowering the chairperson. The chairperson of the board oversees its operation, manages administrative affairs, and authorizes officers to perform specific duties, ensures that the board is functioning effectively. For example, the chairperson's role is similar to the Chief Justice of India, who oversees the functioning of the Supreme Court and ensures that the justice is administered effectively. Similarly, the chairperson of Data Protection Board will also ensure that the board operates smoothly and fulfills its mandate. Action steps to map it to any organizations would be, first, to recognize chairperson authority. We have to respect the chairperson's authority in administrative and procedural matters, which is very crucial for effective governance. Companies respect the authority of a CEO in decision making. Organization must acknowledge the chairperson's role in directing the Data Protection Board's activities. Second, collaborate effectively. We should have clear communication channels between the organization and the chairperson, which is key to a seamless governance. For example, similar to how companies maintain open communication with regulators like the RBI, organizations should also foster good relations with the chairperson of the Data Protection Board to ensure smooth interaction. Third, implement directives. We have to develop mechanisms to quickly implement the chairperson's directives within the organization, which is essential for the compliance. For example, there are many businesses that implement new guidelines from the SEC, that is the Securities and Exchange Commission, to promptly stay compliant. That's how organizations must have processes in place to follow from the Data Protection Board of India without any delay. In conclusion, by mapping these provisions of Chapter 5 of the DPDP Act to any organization leads, we can ensure ongoing commitment of data governance and compliance. Thank you for watching.